Manisha Sanekar Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Hum Om Guru Vajradar Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Hum Pakyuke Kudan Dagilu Pakyuke Sundan Daginga Pakyuke Tudan Dagi Tünyerme Çiktu Çingi Olo Makyuke Kudan Dagilu Makyuke Sundan Daginga Makyuke Tudan Dagi Tünyerme Çiktu Çingi Olo Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Shakya Muni Svoha Sashipeki Choshiameto Tamare Rabalingashi Nide Gempadi Sange Shinto Mikde Ulvarki Drokuna Namda Shingla Chopar Shoyidam Guru Ratna Mindrala Kam Niryatayami Sangye Chedan Tsoge Chonamla Chancho Pardo Dani Kyapso Che Dagi Jinso Gibe Sonam Ki Drola Pinchira Sangye Druparesho Sangye Chedan Tsoge Chonamla Chancho Pardo Dani Kyapso Che Dagi Jinso Gibe Sonam Ki Drola Pinchira Sangye Druparesho Sangye Chedan Tsoge Chonamla Chancho Pardo Dani Kyapso Chi Dagi Jinso Gibe Sonam Ki Drola Pinchira Sangye Druparesho.
In the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, I take refuge until enlightenment. Through the practice of generosity and the other perfections, may I obtain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings.
Dharma and Sangha, I take refuge into enlightenment. Through the practice of generosity and the other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. Namo alhaye ke da luda ne jinke drubundanda mi ke namda drwa kuinge dhanam che tsampa tamche ke to dagi chöten to tamche ke to dagi chöten to. Buongiorno.
Good morning. Yesterday, I realized that I was attached to a romantic idea of how these days of teaching were going to go. So today's already Wednesday. So this time I'm not going to beat about bush, I'm going straight to the point. Oh, sorry, yeah, there is another day. But anyway, let's just see. So maybe we have Friday. Let's get straight to the point. The nice thing is, I believe that it's better to share the teachings in a calm, deep way, rather than being in a hurry to get everything done. Better to do a few things well, and rather than racing to get to the end in time, because we're in a course of life, a path of life, so we don't really have that urgency to finish right now. So anyway, let's go straight to the point. In Kirim, the state of generation, we've seen that there's a part in which we generate bliss, emptiness, on the basis of love and compassion. And therefore this state of love and compassion, wisdom, and bliss, and we bring this state of consciousness, this very positive state, from a very gross level to a very subtle level. This is one of the main objectives within the Vajrayana path in Tantra, in the practices. And as we've seen, it's also because love and compassion and altruism, so-called bodhicitta, serve as an antidote to the obsession of self-gratification. On the other side, we have the correct view of reality, interdependence, the lack of inherent existence, and that it all serves to dismantle our ignorance and create a correct view of reality. So the wisdom is a means of taking method from a superficial level to a very subtle level. The other moment in which that happens, normally the gross mind loses strength and it manifests, and let's say it becomes conscious of itself when in a subtle state, and then it loses force, and then at a very subtle level it where it has a greater self-consciousness is during the process of death. Death is one of the best opportunities we have in our spiritual growth. And if we manage to die with a very virtuous state of mind, we can bring this to a gross level, right down to a subtle, very subtle level, creating a very important imprint in our minds. So in that point, we can create a greater inner transformation than in any years and years of practice. So we can love and compassion, not singly determinant, but they're very, very important. If we look at death itself, to prepare ourselves, it's not a question of just making a will to prepare things, get everything ready. It's not only a question of not having death at the moment of death, but one of the best ways to prepare ourselves is to learn to bring our mind to a positive state in the moments of difficulty. So when we're frightened, we're anxious, we don't know what to do, we're lost, go take refuge, ask for help. Go towards that which is positive, because when we connect our mind with our Guru and Buddha, with Dharma, etc., we connect ourselves with a sentiment of peace, joy, and gratitude, and love, and so on. If we manage to die with that, that's very good. Therefore, in this moment of the practice, there are called the 3 transformations. We transform death, bardo, the intermediate state, and rebirth. What happens, we saw yesterday, the base, it's the base of being able to make this transformation is to create bliss with the help of the elements in self-healing, and to create emptiness, so-called emptiness, correct view of reality, with the mantra Om Sarva Shuddhaham. We generate this state of consciousness on the basis of love and compassion, and a state of bliss, in which we perceive the state of inherent existence as we realize that things appear as having an intrinsic existence, but we realize that that's not true. So this moment, we get into, we simulate the process of death. There are two reasons that come to mind for doing this. Well, there are others, but two principles. Reasons are, one is to train ourselves to this process of bringing state of love, compassion, and wisdom from a gross to a very subtle level. That's one reason. Another reason is, which is very important, is that Vajrayana Tantra, one of the names which is given to Tantra in Tibetan is Dribbula. To bring the result into the path. Therefore, I'm a Buddha, am I? Well, no, I'm not. Have I got mental defilements? Yes. But the more, in order to become that, I need to familiarize myself with that, because we've seen that millions of times. It's a question of habit. So the more I create a different habit, the better it is. The key is the value we give and the identity we assume. So we change our own identity. We don't identify ourselves with our mental defilements. And you say, I'm not that. And to bring the result into the path, which means live today as if I were already a Buddha. Therefore, I allow myself, in this practice, I allow myself to imagine what it would be like to be a Buddha. It means identify myself not with the external aspect, but the internal aspect of love, compassion, wisdom, generosity, humility, rejoicing for the others, free from attachment, from ignorance, no attachment, no fear. I am a Buddha. But in order to do this well, it shouldn't be, I don't see myself like a Buddha. So just to say, I see myself as not Lama Michel. So I've got a very feminine body, and I'm bright green, and the right hand in the mudra of supreme generosity. That's like a carnival attitude, a fancy dress attitude to our identity. I have to see myself as Tara. I have to see myself as being Tara internally. To understand this method better, let's have a quick example. What is this object? Does everybody agree it's a bell? What happens if I were to say, from now on, is a glass? It works well. I decree it's a glass. Okay, it could be too hot because it's made of metal, but it's a glass. For tea, it's too hot. How do you see it? You see it as a glass or as a bell that serves as a glass. How do you see it? You see it as a bell that serves as a glass, because it is a bell. In reality, it appears to us as if because to us it appears in a very autonomous, objective way. It appears to us as a bell. In order for me to be able to see that as a bell, I have to kill the bell identity, take that value away, that name, eliminate it, in order to be able to give a new identity. Otherwise, I'm just sticking one identity onto another, and really the one underneath is the one that prevails. Is that clear? So in the moment in which I say I am Buddha Vajrasattva, Akshobhya, Amitabha, etc. In order to be able to do this, in order to create this divine pride, this identity of recognizing myself in a pure state, first I have to die, kill my old identity. Obviously not talking about physically dying, we're talking about the meditation process of simulating death in order to dismantle that old identity of me, of I. And through this process of dismantling this, of detaching myself in which I am this, that, the other, I have a basis on which I can establish my new identity, pure identity. Because now, if I like it or not, so now, at the moment, now we say I am lazy, bad, sad, depressed, this, that, and the other. And all these aspects of our being seem to us as if they were autonomous, independent, and objective. And it's really, really hard for us to change that. So we tend to stick another identity on top of the old one. That's just fantasy. That's like engaging in fantasy. So you're putting on a mask on for fancy dress. But I know I'm not that mask. So in order to generate, even only momentarily, a pure identity, it's necessary to detach from our previous identity. And for that, we use the process of death. The stronger, clearly, we simulate the process of death, the greater I can detach myself from my name and all the baggage, the identity that I have. So from the essence, that which transcends death, so the very subtle body and mind, I regenerate myself in a pure state where there's no longer this body, this name, all that regards this life. The better I manage to do this, the better I manage to emerge with a new identity. The more I can identify in a state of love, compassion, and wisdom, and gratitude, etc., the more I do it, the more I familiarize myself with this state. So one of the main points of self-healing, as the name suggests, self-healing, which is clear. It means healing the I, myself, which means also the I, my identity. So take away our ordinary identity to create a pure one in which we identify ourselves with our potential, best potential, not our defilements. Anyway, we could go on about this for hours and hours. Therefore, in the simulation of the process of death, has two functions: to prepare ourselves for death, and to bring our virtuous state of mind from a gross to a very subtle level. At the same time, we detach ourselves from our ordinary existing identity, which is the main point here. Is that clear? Therefore, so as I said, we're going to simulate the death process. So it's made up of two parts: the gross death and the subtle death, which is then, the gross level is divided, both are divided into 4 parts. So there are 8 stages, which are given names. Actually, they're quite simple in essence. Let's think of the 4 elements: earth, water, fire, and wind. Which is the most gross? Earth. What's the element that dissolves earth? Water. And that which gets rid of water? Fire. And what gets rid of fire? Wind. And wind, what gets is space. So this is the order of the death process. The earth dissolves into water, or rather is overwhelmed by water. The terms used, we use dissolved in, we tend to say dissolve. And then the water dissolves into fire, the fire dissolves into wind, and the wind dissolves into space of consciousness. Is that clear? Earth, water, fire, wind, and space. Is that clear? So in this booklet, here are some notes I put down, which I also used to explain the process. So on page 6, if you have it, so earth dissolves into water. The word, okay, in Tibetan they say the earth dissolves, but it's not really dissolves. It's not it's not precise. It's not correct, because it's not that the earth goes into the water and dissolves. What happens is that the earth element loses strength, and then immediately, so the next element becomes more evident. It reminds me of, let's imagine here we have many sounds within. Somebody's playing drums, a drill, somebody's playing instruments, another person is singing mantras. We can hear our own breath. Let's imagine this place, this temple is full of noises. While all this is going on, can we hear our own breath? No. It doesn't mean that the sound's not there. It's less. But when the strongest noise, the loudest noise, it's as if it's that the next strongest noise becomes stronger. So the stronger the phenomena are gross, the more we are sensitive to them. Sorry, we're less sensitive. For example, when there's too much light, our eyes are less sensitive. So when the earth elements loses power, force, the next element, which is water, becomes more evident. And then as that in turn loses force, fire becomes more evident, and that in turn loses strength, and then earth takes its place, and then wind, and then space. That's just to explain the concept of dissolving. This leaflet is explained quite well because in this process there are two aspects. There are two aspects, internal and external senses. The internal ones is that which the dying person has as perception. The external aspects is that which we can observe from the outside. So earth dissolves into water. What happens is so the aggregate of the form loses force. So our gross mind, the mirror-like wisdom loses force, the earth element, I sense power, and the inner form also. What happens in a few words, to be brief? The body becomes weaker. Let's think of going to sleep. When you're tired and you start going to sleep, when you fall asleep, what happens? Your arms get floppy and tired, and your eyes can't open. You can't open your eyes completely. So here we see external signs of thinning of arms and legs, weakness and lack of energy, a blurred and unclear vision. The body thins and weakens, and you have a sensation of falling or sinking. I think all of us have had that sensation of nearly falling asleep and then jolting. That happens because, but when you don't want to fall asleep, but you do fall asleep, you're listening to somebody, and you jolt and that is one of the first symptoms in the death process, which tells us that the death process has started. You can't open and close your eyes. The body loses its luster and physical strength. So that's what happens when you go to sleep. The internal vision is a mirage-like vision. It's not really a mirage. A mirage. When we close our eyes, do we have a few images or do we see darkness immediately? There's something, no? What is that? It's the optic nerve, which still has some memories, so that's why we see lights and stuff. In the same way that if we're in front of a very strong light, we close our eyes, we see that light. And it takes time for the darkness to take over. So when we start going to sleep, so we have a kind of foggy image of lights that aren't very clear. It's similar to a mirage. That's the internal experience. In meditation, okay, so that's why in the meditation we focus on not being able to perceive what's going on around us. Our eyes lose, our sight loses power, things become more distant, and we perceive the external world less and less. Also because when one goes to sleep, it's the same as dying. It's as if slowly one loses connection with the external world. I think it's happened to everyone, no? To go to sleep while you're doing something. It happened to me once. That happened to me once when I was driving. Luckily, the car was stationary. I was coming back really late at night. I nearly got to Albagnano. I stopped. It lasted a few seconds, but I remember the sensation. I can't let go, but at a certain point, I just succumbed to it. And And you look towards, and I look towards the inside. Anyway, fortunately, I woke up 2 seconds later, but that's a sensation that we're becoming detached from the external world. So, that's what we imagine. Everything dissolves into light. It's really, it's the sensation that everything's being switched off. Our senses see less and less of the external world. And if we want to be really precise, at the beginning it's not really luminous. It's the sensation. Actually, it's our senses that one by one switch off. We lose contact with the external world. And we focus more and more within ourselves. After water dissolves into fire, we lose the power of hearing. Sounds become more and more distant until at a certain point we can't hear anything. As we see on page 7, we lose the sensation of pleasure, suffering, or indifference. When you wake up with pain, has that ever happened to you? Headache, an ache, a pain somewhere in your body. In my experiences, there's a moment in which you're going to sleep. There's a relief. It's like you release that pain for an instant. You take a distance from it. This is what happens in the second phase, where you lose contact with sensation, gross sensation, pleasure or pain. You can't perceive what's happening outside. And you often see that people who have pain, when you go to sleep, at least you have some respite. You have that, it's, pleasant, unpleasant sensation of losing the contact. And then eventually you wake up with the pain. But at that moment you can, it happened to me once, I had hiccups. And the worst time was, during the day, because I remember going to sleep. I had slight hiccups, but for a while, but at least when I slept, I didn't have it, and then I'd wake up with hiccups. Sometimes I'd wake up before the teachings, because anyway, that's gone, fortunately. When there's unease, you don't feel it anymore in this stage. When water dissolves into fire, so the first thing is you lose feeling. So the water element diminishes, so the body dries up. That means perspiration, blood, and the mouth is dry. You can't hear external sounds. So you can't listen. You can't hear anything. At the same time, you lose sensations. Where are we? Let me see. In a few words, briefly, when water dissolves, we imagine the sounds become more and more distant, and you lose contact with the sensation of pleasure or pain or suffering. The inner vision is smoke-like vision. So it's like a chimney. Sometimes we see the little... Sorry. It's a bit like having a fireplace with smoke, but that's actually not that's not the right depiction. We're actually in the middle of this smoke. So it's like at the beginning, there are all these little lights, the mirage-like vision. But then it becomes totally foggy, as if I'm in the middle of smoke. The importance of learning this when you familiarize yourself with that, you don't panic. When you feel like you're falling, you realize it's a natural process, that the earth is dissolving into water. I'm not really falling. It's part of death. Or I'm going to sleep. Okay, somebody. You become self-aware that when you see the mirage, you're in this process. And then when you have the smoke-like vision, you realize where you are in that case. Then fire dissolves into wind. We lose the capacity for discernment. The mind that says this is that and that is this. Kaput. It's gone. Nothing. In the death process, the gross mind loses force. Therefore, in the first part, at the beginning we lost the capacity to understand what happens around us. The second, we lose our sensations. And in the third part, we lose discernment. What everything. Then they can no longer say this is this and this is that. That happens when fire dissolves into wind. Fire dissolves. There's a loss of heat in the body. The inhaling becomes weaker and exhaling becomes stronger, longer. So breathing becomes more difficult. We lose the capacity slowly to breathe. The important thing is to remember that if we find ourselves someone who's dying, the experience, the internal experience of somebody who's having difficulty in breathing is very different from what we perceive from the outside, because we're seeing two different moments. It's different. It's very different having that kind of difficult breathing when you're fully aware and that when you're not so aware. But when there's no senses, there's no capacity to understand, or there's no discernment, the experience is totally different. And the good news is that, at least for me, and the good thing is in the second process already there are no more sensations, gross sensations. So the pain, suffering, somebody with all their faculties who would live through a similar thing, it would be very different from that which we experience during death. Is that clear? At least that's a relief for me. So the minute it starts, it's already different, because the gross senses switch off one by one. So we don't perceive the same things. So we don't feel like we're choking or when we're asphyxiating, when we can't breathe, because we don't have the sensations. Is that clear? We don't have the mind any longer. The mind that is missing the oxygen. It's different if you die by asphyxiation. That's a different story. It's different. This is the description of a natural death. Let me just open a parenthesis. Quite a few years ago, there was a magazine. No, on the front cover, there was written, in 2050, human beings will no longer die of old age, because science will be able to regenerate ourselves, and so we'll be able to live indefinitely. When I read this, then I said, well, who's actually these days who dies of old age? Nearly no one. It's cancer, problems with the heart. I've known very few people who arrived to the end of their life who died really naturally of old age, and that's a natural death. This is description. This is a description of a natural death. When there's an illness or certain medicines, the relative strength of the elements can change. Not necessarily. But we haven't even got time to go into the details of the death process. So breathing is more difficult, and you can't smell. The smelling goes, pleasant or unpleasant odors. As we said, the wisdom of discernment diminishes and disappears. And here we see the internal vision is firefly-like vision. It's not we actually see them, but what does that mean? So it's points of light, dots of light, like fireflies. First of all, we have the mirage, we said. When you're in the city even, or in the desert, and the heat rises from the road or the sand, and it distorts your vision. And then after we said there's some smoke-like vision. So in that mental fogginess, we start seeing little points of light, like fireflies. That's the internal vision. In our meditation, when we visualize this, we imagine that we lose our sense of smell. We lose our contact with the external world. No powers of discernment. So our contact with the external world is switched off completely. And the external parts of the gross dissolution is that the wind dissolves into space. You can no longer move your body. So before we could move slightly, but now no. All the subtle winds absorb into the heart. The tongue becomes short and thick and blue at the root. And there's a loss of taste. So you lose touch, and you lose the touch, the gustatory sense power. So you lose the contact with the external world in the sense that I want to do this or do that, that brings you to a certain action. You lose that completely. And internally, we see the butter lamp-like vision. Let's imagine that the candle is flickering because it's about to go out. At that moment, what happens? Your breathing stops. No more breathing. And this is the moment in which, and this is in the normal view, one's considered dead. But in Vajrayana, this is only half of the process. There's in Vajrayana, there's the other half, which is the subtle death. Until one gets to the last level, it's actually possible to come back to life. So somebody can actually undertake the death process, or for medicine, or for whatever reason. Whatever reason, up till now, one can come back. That is possible. Therefore, in our mind, what do we see? We're there, we perceive our sight, it ceases. And after that, our hearing, our smell, sense of smell, and the sense of taste. First of all, we lose the ability to perceive the external world, discernment, capacity to want to do something rather than the other. We lose all contact with the external world. It includes the desire for one thing or the other. We're totally detaching from everything. And at this point, it's as if so that we have absolutely no connection with the outside world. So that's the point at which everything dissolves in the seed syllable at our heart. At this point, the seed syllable dissolves into our heart, and that in turn dissolves from the top and bottom towards the center. There's a part at the bottom of the symbol which dissolves into the part above. So all we have left is the half moon and the sun and what we call the nada. Those who can visualize the Tibetan symbol, you know what I'm saying. So the gross body dissolves into the subtle body, and that dissolves. So the gross body has completely dissolved, and then we have the very subtle body, which we see, which is represented by colors: white, red, black, and clear light, or yellow. White, red, black, and yellow. So look at the mandala in the center of our temple. You can see the central stupa. We have the first circle is white from the middle, then right, blue, which is black, and next, and then we have yellow, and that represents the death, the death of the subtle body, where the white represents, which includes the process, the dissolution of our subtle body, which is composed of the energy received from our mother and father, the black, which is where the two energies, those energies, absorb into our heart chakra, which is called the indestructible drop. What is this? The indestructible drop is that which is formed in the moment when we're conceived, at this more subtle level, which contains the body and mind at a very, very subtle level, which is contained in that drop. So the sperm and the egg creates that. It's called the union of the body, a white bodhicitta of the father and red bodhicitta from the mother, and from which develops the rest of us. That's at the moment of when we're conceived. So this is found in our heart, in the heart chakra. Actually, we're found in the center of our heart, this indestructible drop. When we visualize our heart chakra, when we visualize this, all the visualizations start from our essence, that indestructible drop. The symbol and the lights come, and then from there everything emanates. In the white vision, we have this part which concerns aversion, therefore our subtle mind, which has there's no sensation, no concepts, I want this or that. There's only attraction, aversion, and indifference. Anger, it's not conceptual anger, it's the subtle level, the subtle on an emotional level. It's a new word, but let's use that. Even in our language, emotion is a new word. I read a study once, really interesting, by a Western writer who studied the use of the word, the emergence of the word emotion with regards to Tibetan Buddhism. It's because it's new. For example, emotion in Tibetan doesn't even exist. We can say emotion doesn't exist, but obviously anger, sadness, etc. does. So what, at this point, the subtle mind dissolves in a non-conceptual way. It's composed of 3 emotions, let's say, to use that word: attraction, aversion, and indifference. At the moment of death, when the white bodhicitta, which is found at our crown chakra, dissolves, it goes down our central channel. We have the white vision. Everything white. And then, the version represented by the black appears, and then it closes. It's trying just once to manifest itself almost, and then it disappears. And then we get the red bodhicitta from the secret chakra to the navel. It rises, and in that moment, what happens is that the part of attraction, attachment is dissolved, and slowly that capacity, that also goes. When the two energies meet at the heart, at a certain point, they reabsorb in the so-called indestructible drop. Let's say it's like a shell. Let's say a shell of a walnut or something. The upper part is white and the lower part is red. White male bodhicitta and red bodhicitta female at the bottom. So the male energy, it goes down, is absorbed in the white part, and the red bodhicitta absorbed in the lower red part. These two turn, and the white goes towards the reverse positions. And at that point, the indestructible drop opens. When the shell, let's say, turns, and that's the vision, the black vision. Everything, there's no energy, there's no prana, there's no winds, no activity whatsoever in the nervous system, nothing. And when it turns like this, all the winds dissolve in the heart chakra in this indestructible drop. In that moment, it's as if there were like everything is turned off. It's like a blackout, total blackout. No sensations, no perception of anything. It's as if a black vision of a total blackout. At that point, the perception is sort of not existing. We have no self-reference. Everything is turned off. This is the last part of death, just before the very final part. When this indestructible drop opens, the white body, and we said that the two body cheetahs swap places. And when the indestructible drop opens, in the inside, the very, very subtle mind and body, it's very subtle prana energy, which is, so the body, a very subtle body and mind, at a very subtle level, are inseparable. Our mind is, there's no thoughts, no concepts, names, ideas, sensations, no perception of senses, no attraction, aversion, indifference, only the imprints of our emotions, of our habits, sensations, as if, like the seed. It's like the seed of a tree. We can say in that seed that there are all the imprints for that tree, no? But it's not the tree. Let's say we have an apple seed. Is that an apple? No. There's the potential to generate an apple. All the information is contained in that seed. The shape, the leaves, everything is contained inside. Our subtle mind, very subtle body and mind, has all the information of our imprints, experiences, our karmic force, all that information. When this drop opens, turns and opens, the very subtle mind becomes aware of itself. The gross part has gone. The subtle, the part has gone, is lost. And the subtle, very subtle mind arises. There's nothing to perceive except itself in a very pure, subtle form. That is the clear light. It's a name which is given to the effective death. Clear light is where, in the moment in which there's no gross body or mind or subtle body or mind, only very, very subtle body and mind. And this happens. This is described in, it's something that happens very quickly. Okay, it's something that comes and goes, usually without awareness, but it is possible to develop awareness. Okay, understanding what awareness at a very subtle level means is another subject. When we get to the black vision, everything to which we identify ourselves is no longer there. Body, perception of that around us, the contact with people, place, objects, we're totally separated from all that. The deepest contacts are there, ties, but in that moment we lose contact with them. Discernment, affection, contact with senses. No attraction, aversion until everything is turned off. When we get to the black vision, it means that everything in which I recognize myself at gross or subtle level, ciao, it's gone. It's no longer there. At that point, it's described that the experience of clear light is like the dawn of a clear day. Let's say it's described as it's the dawn during autumn, because there's no humidity on the ground, so everything's clearer. There's no heat on the ground. So it's the dawn after an autumn night with no moon. So after that black, we get a slight rays of light start emerging until there's light. And those first rays of light is our own subtle, very subtle mind, which becomes self-aware. From that total blackness, there arises the state of clear light, which occupies everything. So when we say the infinite emptiness, we're talking about this process, this part of the process. I prefer, when we do the meditation very quickly, and we don't go through each of the stages, I prefer to talk about the luminosity before. Otherwise, people remain in the dark. The objective is to get to the clear light, not to remain in the complete darkness. Therefore, in the meditation, what do? We generate bliss, emptiness on the basis of love, remind ourselves continually of that state, and then we simulate the state of death, trying to keeping our attention on the fact that anything that appears to me is absolutely without any inherent existence. First I lose the sight and I see a kind of mirage, but that's empty of inherent existence. Then the hearing capacity I lose, and then I get this smoke-like vision, but that's lacking inherent existence. Then I lose smell sense, and I see the firefly vision, but that's lacking inherent existence. And then I lose taste, etc., and I see the butter lamp vision, but that's lacking inherent existence. So then I have the white vision, and I lose a sensation of attraction, aversion, indifference. And then the white vision also, during the white vision, I lose the sense of desire. So all these, throughout all the process that I've just described, we remind ourselves of the lack of inherent existence of all these. When the clear light arises, that too is also lacking in inherent existence. So there's a thread running through. We maintain this thread of recognizing the lack of inherent existence. The thread, the modus operandi. Let's say the thread. So that runs through all our perception in the death process. So things are seen in the same way. The objective is to get to the clear light with bliss and emptiness. How do we do this? The gross mind, when it loses force, the last thought we have with our gross mind is that which determines our experience. That directs our subtle mind, and the last thought with our subtle mind is that which directs the very subtle mind. So in the meditation, if we if we do like a medium, middle way version, we generate love and compassion. Then we perceive all the senses and we perceive that they're going one by one. We lose a connection. We just let go of things. If you do it well, there's a kind of... So there's a kind of... Just let things go, the name, material things. What I think of this person or that person, ciao, that's all gone. We're simulating death. But the interesting thing is, at the moment of death, but you can't go down too many rabbit holes when you're actually dying. You have to have this as second nature. You need to do this automatically. So you have to, because when you go to sleep, for example, you can't start reasoning. So we need to prepare ourselves before death, not during death. So there's this simulation. We imagine everything just fades away. Then the white vision, red vision, black vision. And the better we can imagine the black vision, the better we can, the better the possibility of meditating the clear light. So it's said that there's no hurry to get to the clear light. We turn everything really well. We turn everything off slowly, carefully. So the light is so bright. Before arriving at that point, because otherwise the subtle light, the clear light that arises like a dawn, is obscured by the other visions which we haven't turned off. So the black vision is really important to let this subtle light arise. When we get to the end of the clear light, we remain at that state, and this point, there are 4 characteristics we should have. Transforming clear light, to transforming death, transforming the clear light of death into Dharmakaya, the truth body. So we're not talking about the whole process. It's when the mind really, the final part of the clear light. So if we were to represent the death, I would say clear light. That's the image for me that I would use. In this moment, it's as if what we do is there's nothing apart from this infinite emptiness, infinite light. It's the body, it's a very subtle body and mind, which becomes self-aware, self-evident. What happens in that moment? The clear light in itself is nothing special. In the text, the debate between wisdom and ignorance, if I remember well, from the bodhisattva who's in the 10th bhumi, the highest level of realization before becoming a Buddha, to the level of an ant. I don't know why they use that as the lowest level. So from the bodhisattva, the 10th bhumi, to the ant, at the moment of death, There's the mother. This is the clear light of the mother. This is the Mahamudra of the basis. So whatever being, whichever being, when it dies, enters into the clear light. It's like, so even a mosquito, any being, at the end of their life, has an experience of clear light. It's the mother clear light. The key is to be able to unite this with that of the daughter, the state, which is the state of wisdom, with the state of bliss that one has. Son, which has been. So we combine that with the bliss, which we have been nurturing during our lives, the Dharmakaya, the body, essence body. It's my interpretation, and my teachers. I've never read it, but my teachers confirm it. The Dharmakaya is the body and mind at a very subtle level, in a pure state of a Buddha. Therefore, to transform death into the Dharmakaya, which means to get into the clear light. And there are the 4 characteristics. Appearance, mode of apprehension, observer, and identity. Appearance, mode of apprehension, observer, and identity. The first, Noah Thompson. So the appearance of total emptiness. So there's a total luminous emptiness. It's not that I'm in this space, it's I'm part of that space. It's described as within which there's no I or you, here, there, before or after. It transcends space and time totally. Non-dual. There's not the observer and the observed. There's no I which perceives I'm, or I am perceived. No, I'm part of this emptiness, which is nothing more than the very subtle mind which can only perceive itself. So appearance of the luminous clear light, the mode of apprehension, it's lacking inherent existence. It's not objective, it's not autonomous. Long before, in order to be able to do this, one has to have been able to develop that and bring it from a gross level to a lower and lower level. So it appears to me as lacking inherent existence. The appearance of the infinite emptiness, the mode of apprehension, is a lack of intrinsic existing. The observer is he who experiences this, which is great bliss, the state of bliss and joy and pleasure. It's that which experiences the luminous void. The divine pride of Dharmakaya, I am, this union, non-dual union of bliss and emptiness, because where there's bliss, there's lack of inherent existence, and vice versa. You can't separate them. This non-dual state of bliss and emptiness, of clear light, is Dharmakaya, and I am Dharmakaya. You identify yourself with Dharmakaya. Obviously, we're talking about of a reality. It is a realization which is not conceptual, but I'm explaining it in conceptual terms to help generate the state. So there are 4 characteristics: appearance, mode of apprehension, the observer, he who experiences this is great bliss, and I am the non-dual union of bliss and emptiness in a very subtle level of clear light. I am the Dharmakaya because I'm generating a body, very subtle body and mind at a very subtle level. Actually, when we do this transformation, the body and mind in a very subtle level, in a pure form, is actually simulating the moment of reaching enlightenment, which is what we meditate on in Vishwa Shanti Home. It's the same thing. The very subtle body and mind at a very subtle level, in a pure form. So it's a recurrent theme. We imagine at this point that we die, everything dissolves, we lose contact with the world. What remains is a very subtle state which we generate it with love and compassion and wisdom. We eliminate on a very subtle level in this way ignorance, and the wrong view of reality. So that's what we mean by transforming death into the Dharmakaya. Let me just open a parenthesis, which can happen in 3 ways. In meditation, I sit down, I imagine all the process of death. I imagine the clear light. I stay in meditation, the clear light with the 4 characteristics. That's one way of meditating. The more you do that, well, the better you can, that the winds, the prana, actually absorb, dissolve into the heart and embark into the death process. You don't die, but you by meditation you can make the winds absorb. So we can transform the death of meditation into Dharmakaya. The first mixing is clear light of meditation with Dharmakaya. The other situation in which we can do this is during sleep. When we go to sleep, the level one can learn to become aware of the dissolution of the elements when we go to sleep and recognize the clear light of sleep and unite with this, unite this with Dharmakaya. That's very professional, but who manages to do this during meditation and sleep has a huge chance of being able to do it during actual death. The 3 levels of being able to transform clear light into Dharmakaya is during meditation, sleep, and death. So the real one is death, And the previous two are preparation for that moment. We could be here for hours and hours. With this, that which we have, so we've seen transforming death into Dharmakaya. Is that more or less clear? The second part, just very quickly, I'll give you a quick overview. When we die, the very subtle mind becomes self-evident, and then immediately after, it's reborn in Bardo, which is actually a rebirth in itself, without a gross body. But it's a form of rebirth, in which the mind, the body, so the body comes out of a very subtle state, and it's like it becomes the body in a dream. Sometimes when we wake up in the middle of a dream, and we find ourselves, who knows where, doing what. We wake up in a dream. One of the characteristics of sleep is that if I dream that I find myself, I don't know, in Borobudur, it's not in the dream. I have to take the plane and get there. And then it's instant. I'm there instantly. Bardo is very similar to sleep. You die, and from clear light, boom, you wake up another reality, which one doesn't know is Bardo. You live it as it's real. As in the same way as when you dream, you don't realize you're dreaming. And it can be of any type. I just wanted to correct something here. There's a prayer for people who die, who Lama Gangchen taught us when he first came to the West, where there's really a small big error when it says, assembly, irate and pacific deities, please liberate me from the narrow, fearful stage of the passage of Bardo. Actually, what it means is liberate me from not from a frightful passage. Otherwise, it's like saying, please protect me. Okay. The difference is, like, we don't say, please protect me from the fear of dreaming. It's only if the dream is fearful. So what I mean is that Bardo is not necessarily negative. It depends on various factors which we won't look into now. So it's please free me from the fear of a difficult passage. In Bardo, we don't generate a physical body or gross mind. It's described as being able to last. This is relative as number, but 7 weeks are usually given because every 7 days is described as the maximum for every life within Bardo, and it's possible to have 7 lives. Let's say in one night. How many dreams can you have in one night? 1 or more? More than 1? More than 20 or less than 20? well, I don't know anybody who's had 20, I think less. I don't think so. I've never heard of it. It's described at the maximum. The maximum of lives in Bardo is 7. From one dream to another, you could start one dream and start another, which is totally unconnected. Similarly, in Bardo, there's a possibility of a little death within Bardo and a rebirth in a new Bardo. When the Bardo is finished and one takes a physical body, it's similar to the process of waking up. So sleep is similar to death, and waking up is similar to rebirth. What happens is that in the meditation, we imagine that we're in the clear light. In that moment, we generate a thought. So if I remain in a very Dharmakaya, in a very subtle body and mind, the only people who can preserve me in that state is a Buddha. Who can I interact with? Myself or a Buddha. But I want to help others. In order to do this, I have to adapt to them. Therefore, I have to manifest myself in a gross state. So I want to help sentient beings. Therefore, I must generate a gross body. So then we have the second transformation of the Bardo into the enjoyment body, or Sambhogakaya. At this point, we imagine that in an instant the universe re-arises and we arise as a very subtle body of light. So tomorrow we'll look at this in more detail. And from this subtle body, we generate ourselves in a pure form to benefit sentient beings. I need to generate a gross body. And then we simulate the process of rebirth until I've generated a complete physical body. And these are the three. So which includes Nirmanakaya, the emanation body. These are the three transformations. Lama Gangchen actually put emphasis on the body mandala, which comes later. And this is described in self-healing, in the manual of the practice, but not in an explicit way. When we recite the practice, the three transformations are found in that moment of silence, in the moment after Om Sabhava Shuddha Sarva Dharma Sabhava Shuddha Hom, and there we imagine the process of death, Bardo, and rebirth. Just to conclude what we said earlier, we have three transformations: clear light into death, into Dharmakaya, in a very subtle mind, but in a pure form, and then body mind in a subtle form in Bardo, Sambhogakaya, and generate we generate the gross body and mind in pure form, i.e. Nirmanakaya. So the 9 mixings are meditation death with Dharmakaya, Bardo of meditation with Sambhogakaya, and the rebirth in meditation with Nirmanakaya. The second, so I'm talking now of something very advanced. So I do these mixings, the clear light of sleep with Dharmakaya, the union of dreaming with Dharmakaya and waking with Nirmanakaya. And the three unions, the time of the union of the cloud of death with Dharmakaya, the union of Bardo with the Sambhogakaya, and the union of rebirth with Nirmanakaya. So the last three I mentioned is actually the effective process of reaching enlightenment. If you dedicate a practitioner who dedicates his whole life to this, at least 4 times a day, meditates on death with all its smallest ditas and learns to have awareness during sleep and to have conscious dreams, lucid dreams, and to be able to transform, to do the 3 mixings during his sleep, so that at the time of death he actually manages to do that. This very briefly, the path that we take at a very advanced level. When I was talking to a friend once, I was talking to a Rinpoche once, I was talking about dreams. I was 14 at the time. And I was talking to this friend of mine who had the same age. He entered the monastery when I was 3 years old. But for me, I dream, and you dream, and you wake up, and you wake up. He never lost awareness. And I had to say, well, actually, it's not normal, you know. This is one of signs of realizations. So when we do self-healing, we're at the beginner's level of preparation. So gradually we're creating the imprints to this path. That's why I say it's good for beginners and those who are super advanced. There's everything within it. So I wanted to kind of give an idea of where we're heading for an advanced level. Okay. Tomorrow we'll go through the 3 transformations, and we'll look at the body mandala.
Drove munsel takto ne gyur che kewa kunto yanda lama dang dralme cheki pela longche chin sada lamge yente rabzo ne dorje change kopa nyur tobo sho nimo dele tsindele nime kuyan delek shin ninsen takto delek pe Kuncho sumke chinge lobo, kuncho sumke ngodrubutsol, kuncho sumke trashisho. All'alba o al tramonto, di notte o durante il giorno, possano i 3 gioielli concederci le loro benedizioni, possano aiutarci ad ottenere tutte le realizzazioni, il cosmo pagare il sentiero della nostra vita con molti segni di buon auspicio. At dawn or dusk, at night or midday, may the 3 jewels grant us their blessings. May they help us to achieve all realizations and sprinkle all the path of our lives with various signs of auspiciousness. Om Ahon Temba Lame Sangye Rinpoche, Kyoba Lame Tamche Rinpoche, Tremba Lame Gende Rinpoche, Kyamne Kuncho Sumla Chepa Bu. Buon appetito a tutti.
Buon appetito.